ahead and get started as is. Again, thank you for joining us. This is our new presentation, Wi-Fi Security 101. This is some cybersecurity awareness training as part of our Solutions for the Common Worker series. So the Solutions for the Common Worker series, as opposed to our Solutions for IT Professional series, is designed for anybody. You don't need any IT experience to get some good tips out of this. So this is great for everyone on your staff. If you're an IT professional who has joined, you can take away a few things to share with your team. If you're not an IT professional, that's great too. We have plenty of information designed for you. My name is Shane Caffrey. I am the marketing director for Lee Shanok Network Solutions, and joining me is David Gunther, a certified network technician.
Hello.
Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping things. If the room does get too much bigger, I will ask that everyone remember to please keep themselves on mute. Right now, it doesn't seem to be too much of an issue. We have a relatively small room, but again, I'm expecting a few more people to trickle in. So we will have a time for questions at the end. Our preferred way to address questions, if you have them during the presentation, please just go ahead and enter those in chat, and David and I will either get to those while we're going through, or we can handle those at the end. The Grubhub gift card. So this is a lunch and learn. We try to do these every month. So everyone who is in attendance will be receiving the $20 Grubhub gift card, courtesy of Brianna, in your inboxes. As always, if you have any trouble receiving those, let us know, but you should have those, probably about halfway through or toward the end, waiting for you in your inbox so you can enjoy lunch right after. This is going to be a brief one. We have the whole hour booked out, but I only expect it to take about 45 minutes. This is a pretty concentrated topic, so hopefully we can get you out of here just a little bit early. Before we jump in, I have a little icebreaker for you. What is the funniest Wi-Fi network name you've ever seen or heard of? Now, take out your phones and go ahead and scan that QR code. I am going to
You're not
jump
sharing,
out
Shane.
of here. What's that?
Yeah, you need to share the QR code.
Are you not seeing it on the...
Nope.
Oh, here we go. I lost my WebEx there for a moment. Okay, you seeing the QR code now?
Yep.
Perfect. And the system logged me out, so I'm just going to log back in and get this fired up for us. Here we go. So that should be open now. It's using the Slido app, which is just on your browser in your phone. So go ahead, please enter that icebreaker question answer in there. This also helps us take attendance too when WebEx decides not to remember and we're having trouble trying to remember who to send those Grubhub gift cards to. So please, please, please go ahead and scan that. Okay, and then I'm going to share the answers that we are seeing here. Why You Here is good. Iron Man, okay. I want to know the story behind Dragon Breath. Nacho Wi-Fi is a good one. That's a classic. Get your own. FBI surveillance van. That's another classic one, David. Yep. Oh, Brianna's got a good one. Beachless Beach House. That's pretty good. Looks like we have maybe one more person working on it. Give it just a few more seconds here. Oh, here we go. Panic at the Cisco. Not bad, Ben. Not bad at all. That's very good. Oh, that one got Brianna. Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is just a silly little thing to help us get thinking about Wi-Fi, get thinking about security, right? Maybe we're seeing some networks we shouldn't be connecting to. But let's go ahead and jump back in. Thank you for indulging me. We'll have a couple more questions using that Slido app. So go ahead and keep that open. As the other questions come up, those will automatically get replaced. You'll still have the QR code there too. Oh, no problem, Joy. We were just talking about our funniest Wi-Fi names. Mine was Pretty Fly for a Wi-Fi. A couple others, we had Panic at the Cisco. We had FBI surveillance van. All sorts of fun. So we'll have a couple more questions as we go through. None of them are as fun as this. Oop. Now let's go ahead and jump back in. Okay, you have been listening to me dither on long enough. I'm going to kick it over to David to talk about the types of Wi-Fi attacks, what we need to be on the lookout for before we talk about how to defend ourselves.
Gotcha. All right. So these are a lot of the common attack vectors that are used for Wi-Fi. The most common, of course, is the fake Wi-Fi network. Here's a fun little experiment that Shane dug up, run by Avast, the security company, outside the RNC, or Republican National Convention. They put up two free Wi-Fi internets, I Vote Hillary free internet and I Vote Trump, and got 1,200 people to connect to those, with which they gathered the following data on the right. So while it's kind of funny, and I'm not going to touch on the politics at all in this meeting, I think it's interesting just to see all the data that was collected just from connecting to one of those fake Wi-Fi networks. So here's the kind of stuff you could expose to a potential malicious person, and thankfully Avast was just doing it for kind of information gathering purposes. We trust them. But yeah, this is the kind of stuff that could get out if you connect to one of these networks. You can see all the apps that they were using, their Yahoo or Gmail, use their chat apps, Amazon banking websites, which we know not to do on public Wi-Fi. And we can see who plays Pokemon Go, which is always fun. Those of us like me who are still holding on in the hopes that that won't die out completely. All right. So, but yeah, this data, and you could probably see quite a bit of the data that was passed along in these apps, which luckily Avast is not the type to expose, but it does create a bit of a picture of what exactly can be accessed. So here's some of the other attacks that can be used. Man-in-the-middle attacks are basically, so the perpetrator who's running the network has the ability to put in some potential redirects or eavesdropping options. So they can see what's on the connection, and they could potentially, if you try to go to, for example, your Chase Bank website there, drop in a website in the middle of that you redirect to. And if you don't notice it's a different URL, you could very well put in your bank username and password. And then that would be transmitted to the attacker, and then probably also to the Chase website, which would just log you right in, and you'd pop in, and you would not know that anything suspicious had even happened along the way, because you would have just simply put in your credentials and gone straight to the bank site. But now they can log into your bank account. Yet another reason why we recommend multi-factor authentication, because they can't get that more than once out of this sort of thing. Cool. So yeah, in the real world comparison, if your mail carrier were to open your bank statement, copy your account info, reseal the envelope, and deliver to your mailbox, except this is simply done over Wi-Fi to potentially a lot of people. So something to watch out for. Your information can be very easily stolen. And then packet sniffing. So this is software that captures and analyzes data. We use it in IT, of course, to troubleshoot network issues. If one of our users can't connect to a website, we want to be able to sniff out where those packets are going and why they're not making it to the site and back properly. But it can definitely be used to eavesdrop on any unencrypted traffic, and you can collect any unencrypted data, passwords, authentication tokens, and traffic data. That's why we always recommend looking for in your browser that little lock icon up in the corner. That shows that you are on a secure website and your traffic is encrypted, which will keep this sort of attack from happening. But it's best not to expose anything to begin with by joining a suspicious Wi-Fi network.
So let's talk about some of the different areas where you're going to be connecting to Wi-Fi, starting with the most risky, which is public Wi-Fi. So we talked about fake networks, right? So how would you know which network is legitimate if you're sitting in a McDonald's and you're connecting to Mick Wi-Fi or you're connecting to McDonald's Wi-Fi? Which one is safe? One of them is probably fake. How are you supposed to know which one? Another example, all of these seven different Starbucks networks that are available to connect to. Maybe one or two of those is legitimate, but there are so many in there. How are you supposed to know what to connect to and what is safe? So if you are in an environment like this, one of the easiest things to do is ask the staff for the correct network. A legitimate network is usually going to require a password. A rogue network, they always want to let you in with as few steps as possible. So the example of a cafe, right? Sometimes you'll see the Wi-Fi password posted publicly, like at the counter or on the wall or something. Sometimes you have to be a customer, and the barista has to give you the password in order to connect. The lock isn't a 100% foolproof system. If a hacker was really clever, they could set up a similarly named network in a cafe with a publicly available password, and they would just make the password the exact same. So you'd think you were connecting, but how would you know? But the key is really be wary of open networks. Those are less secure than the ones with the lock, like you can see in the Starbucks example. Avoid public Wi-Fi whenever possible. We're going to be talking about different ways to stay safe while you are using public Wi-Fi. But what do we all have in our pockets, right? We have a cell phone, and we can connect to our cellular data. And that cellular connection is going to be more secure than a public Wi-Fi connection. If you have unlimited data, great, that's an easy answer. Some of us don't, right? Some of us are metered. We don't want to dip into our allowance of excess cell data. We don't want to get that extra charge at the end of the month. So we get it. Public Wi-Fi, it exists. We recommend to avoid it whenever it's possible. But here's a few ways to stay safe. A few common targets. What are some of the things that these places have in common, right? Airports, cafes, convention centers, hotels. These are places where you are spending a good amount of time. And in the case of airports and hotels, it's while you're traveling. So you're away from home, you're in a different environment, you need to connect. Maybe you don't know where to connect. It could be very easy to set up a fake network in these locations and have people directly connect to a fake Wi-Fi network. You're sitting there for half an hour, 2 hours. So there's a good chance that while you're connected to that rogue network, you're going to be entering in some important details that the hackers want to steal from you. So these are the types of places to be extra wary of, because it's where that free Wi-Fi can be the most valuable oftentimes. When you are connecting to a public network, whether it's a secured one or an open one, we highly recommend using a VPN. A VPN creates an encrypted tunnel between you and your destination. So in this graphic here, the user connects to a VPN server, which then connects to the internet, and it's able to keep the hacker out. And a large part of the security of a VPN is the encryption. So it's an encrypted tunnel, meaning all the data flowing across the network can't be read in plain text. It's encoded. And somebody outside of that network isn't going to be able to decrypt the data, not without a lot of extra heavy lifting. So it makes these Wi-Fi attacks that David was talking about a lot more difficult. It prevents a man-in-the-middle attack, and a packet sniffer is not going to be able to decrypt all the encrypted data floating across the network. Now, our caveat to this when you're using a VPN is that we always recommend a paid VPN over a free VPN service. The paid VPN, you are paying for the security and anonymity that goes along with a VPN, right? A lot of times people will also use a VPN to hide their data from their internet service provider, their ISP. It can keep you anonymous because you're not connecting directly through the internet service provider's connection. So what happens when you're using a free VPN? Well, a free VPN, 9 times out of 10, how they make their money is instead of your ISP getting all of the data that you're sending across the network and the ISP turning around and selling it to advertisers, the VPN, the free VPN, is doing the exact same thing. They're selling that data that they're collecting because it's that old axiom: if you're getting a free service, right, you're not the customer, you're the product. So the paid VPN is always better. They're relatively cheap. They're generally a few bucks a month. You can pay the whole year. We don't recommend any one in particular over the others. These three here: ExpressVPN, Surfshark, and NordVPN. Those are three of the biggest players in the space. They're very easy to use and they're cheap. So take your pick among those, do your own research if you're concerned about one over the other. The last piece here in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see the Cisco AnyConnect. So if you're one of our customers, chances are you are using the AnyConnect VPN to tunnel into your company network. If you ever have to work from home and connect to the network, that AnyConnect VPN is doing the same thing. It's creating that encrypted tunnel into your company environment. So that's what it looks like, and it's just a little reminder for anybody who uses it here on the call. This is what we're talking about. Your phone loves to remember the Wi-Fi networks that it has connected to previously. So when you're on a public Wi-Fi network, you connect for the first time, your phone is by default set to remember that network. So anytime you come across it again, it'll automatically join. This is super convenient for your home network, right? So you don't have to enter in your username, your password to connect to your home Wi-Fi every single time. But it makes it a big security risk in public Wi-Fi. Again, you connect once, really you only want to be connected for that one time, and then you don't need to be connected again. But if you're driving by, it'll connect automatically. You're walking by. It's a security risk. So what you have to do is go in and disable that auto join feature. On an iPhone, it's a little more inconvenient because it makes you disable auto join for each network individually. So when you're connecting to a public Wi-Fi network, the easiest way to do it is disable that auto join right away, right after you connect. Make sure auto join is disabled. The nice thing about iPhone is across the board, it makes you connect to the Wi-Fi network manually the first time before enabling that auto join. So it's not going to connect to anything that you don't approve of already, but it is inconvenient because you have to go in and do it one by one. Android is a little bit different. You can disable that Wi-Fi auto connection across the board in your Wi-Fi settings. The thing with Androids is some models, not all, will be set to auto join any open network automatically without input from the user. They're largely moving away from that, but it still is worth checking out. If you have an Android feature, be sure to disable that auto join, because the worst possible thing would be automatically joining a network without a known, or without you knowing about it. And a few safe browsing tips. So you've connected to the Wi-Fi, you're all happy, you're going, you got your VPN, right? You're smart. we're still going to recommend using cell phone data instead of your Wi-Fi. That's a better choice. Try not to do public Wi-Fi whenever possible. But you're doing it. You're trying to do it safely. We applaud you. Good rule of thumb, avoid sensitive sites like a banking website. You don't log into your bank, your financial information. Don't be entering that into any site while you're connected to public Wi-Fi. Just not worth the risk. Broadly speaking, try to avoid any site that requires a login. If there is anybody sniffing around on that network, they're going to be able to potentially get those usernames and passwords, those login credentials. You don't want anybody else having those. If you do log in, log out when you're done. One thing to always check out for when you're on public Wi-Fi, right? Your security alarm is raised a little bit more. Make sure you're checking all of the sites for the HTTPS or the little lock in the URL. That means it's a secure connection. It's encrypted, so it's one additional layer of security. And your browser, they've gotten really good about warning you about unsecure sites. So this example at the bottom, listen to the browser. Don't try to. You're not going to be smarter than the computer. Public Wi-Fi, it's not worth taking the risk. Back out. Do not connect. Don't complete the connection. Don't do the manual override. Okay, one more participation question for you. So you should already have it up on your phone. So I'll get that started. Joy, if you want to scan this QR code if you missed it the first time, I'll give you a second to do that before I stop sharing. And it'll be on the site too if you're digging around for your phone. Good to go. All right, thank you. Okay, so that should be open now, and I'm going to go ahead and share. So this is a theoretical question. You're at the airport, you want to connect your laptop to the internet. Which is the safest option? Put in mine here. Okay, very good. We got a few more people. Remember, this helps us take attendance for those Grubhub gift cards. So please participate if you can. Thank you. Okay, I think we have just about everybody in here. So what is the correct answer? We've got a split 70-30 between using a mobile hotspot to create a network or asking the airport staff which network to connect to. Now, neither of these is a bad idea, right? That's the good news. But one of them is safer than the other. And the safer option is to use your phone's hotspot to create a network using your cellular data. Now, why is that? Ro, if you remember, our first and foremost tip about public Wi-Fi is don't use it if you don't have to. Your cellular connection is much more secure. So if you create a mobile hotspot with your phone, you can connect your laptop to it with using the Wi-Fi connection. Asking the airport staff is a great secondary option if you're trying to connect to that public Wi-Fi, but your better choice, your safer choice is avoid public Wi-Fi. If at all possible, use that cellular data. Very good. Most of you got it right. This is a good discussion question, and I did put that in there to trick you all. We talked about all of these, right? So only connecting if the network is password protected. That's a good tip as well. Disabling auto join, right? We talked about that. Best to avoid public Wi-Fi. All right, let's jump back in. All right, and David's going to talk about company Wi-Fi.
All righty. So, if you are the one in charge of managing your company's Wi-Fi, this is a little bit more for the IT professionals, or if you're in an office without an IT professional, whoever got stuck with this duty. So we want to go with the best thing to do is to segment the guest and the staff Wi-Fi. You want the pretty much a heavy wall in between those two networks. And the guest Wi-Fi, you also just want to pretty much shut off all potential communication to anything other than the internet. So that basically should be a network that devices only have a connection straight to the internet. They're not allowed to talk to other devices. They're not allowed to access any company resources. Luckily, a lot of business and even residential class routers will have the option to set up a guest network with all those protections already in place. It's pretty much understood that the guest network will have just a connection to the internet and nothing else. And then, yeah, additionally, some of the business class networking devices will let you potentially put, some traffic caps on that, limit the bandwidth, things like that. Make sure your guests can't just pop in, get on the internet, and then use all of your bandwidth essentially for their purposes. But yeah, it's basically just to make sure that that is as locked down as possible. And your personal devices, so any personal phones and things like that that you bring into the office, should be connected to the guest Wi-Fi and not the staff Wi-Fi, just to ensure that all the personal stuff that's done on there is just the internet. They don't need to access company data on their personal stuff. Alrighty, and then managing staff access. So here's how to lock down this staff network. So obviously, a lot of the time you'll find that staff networks will be the password protected one with a shared password among the entire staff. This isn't really the best method. We don't recommend it. Since if an employee leaves, they now have your internal Wi-Fi password still, and they can connect with any device and potentially gain access to other computers or devices, or even company data that they should no longer have access to at the point they're terminated. Or you need to change the Wi-Fi password anytime somebody leaves, and that is very inconvenient for everybody on staff. So the best solution there is to set up a Radius server that will allow for your Wi-Fi to authenticate to your network credentials. So whatever the username and password that your employees use to log into their computers will be the same one that they'll use to log into the Wi-Fi network. And at any point, if you terminate an employee account because the employee is no longer with the company, then you can basically just terminate their network credentials, and that'll knock out their Wi-Fi access and their computer access at the same time. And that is a very convenient way to make sure that your employees don't forget the password either, because it is simply the password they use to log into their computer. And of course, they'll forget that too, but it can be very easily reset. Alrighty, and then your consumer grade routers versus firewalls. So your consumer grade router is basically designed to provide protection for your home network, and it does not have very many firewall features. The cool thing is, as time's gone by, they've started to integrate more and more actual firewall features into there, but it should not be confused for an actual business class firewall. Um, they're missing stuff like intrusion prevention systems. It's hard to tell when somebody's trying to get in, whereas newer security devices and things like that for business grade are have those features to where you can detect if hackers are trying to get into your network. Additional packet inspection, things like that, and then usually more robust web content filtering. Although the consumer grade ones have been getting pretty good at filtering out websites and things like that, with the whole option of parental controls and things like that. And then most of all, you will probably not be meeting compliance requirements if you're using a consumer grade router or a firewall at your business, because it just does not have the features and things necessary for those compliance requirements that may be on there if you have sensitive data of any sort on your network. Just best to get the premier grade firewall, protect that stuff, and make sure that somebody with some IT knowledge is managing it, which we are happy to do for all our clients. And then MAC addresses. So your MAC address is basically a we're used to seeing IP addresses a lot, and an IP address is basically a temporary network address given out to every device. It can be semi-permanent or something like that, but those will be for identify who you are on that network. Your MAC address identifies your specific piece of hardware. So every network adapter that you have So your phone's Wi-Fi adapter, for example, or your computer's Wi-Fi adapter, or your computer's network jack. Those will all have their unique MAC address that lets the network know this is this device. And so a cool thing you can do is put on MAC filtering, which will basically you set up a list of every known MAC address that should be on the network, and those are now the only ones allowed to connect. So somebody brings in their own cell phone or their own laptop or their own thing like that, asks to connect to the network. They've got the credentials, they've got the password, they've got all that stuff. Unless their device is on the approved list, they will not be allowed to connect. And they'll have to stay on the guest network until they are added to the list. Now, this, of course, is not a foolproof option. MAC addresses can be spoofed, but in order to do that, you would need to know one of the MAC addresses of one of the devices that is allowed on the network, and that can be a little hard to dig up unless you're specifically targeting that company. So that would be it'll prevent a lot of general attacks and things like that. It would take somebody launching a direct and specific attack on your network to be able to crack through that sort of thing.
Okay, so that was company Wi-Fi. Now let's talk about securing Wi-Fi in your home. So this question doesn't require your phone. Don't worry about that. Please put your answer in chat. You get a new router. You come home from Best Buy. You got a nice, fresh, brand spanking new router. What should your first step be? We're thinking about security. What are some people thinking? Read the directions. Very good. Change the network. Yep. Network name and key. Yep. Password. Good guess. Take it out of the box. Yes, yes, yes. Remove. Make sure your password is hard. Okay, okay, okay. Yes, I'm seeing a lot of good answers, and I did anticipate a couple of smartasses in the chat. Yes, the first step. Well, I guess technically David is right. The first step is take it out of the box. So step 0, take it out of the box. Step 1, yes, you got to plug it in. You got to make sure it's working. But the first security step, most of you got this right. Yes, change the default password. Those come out of the factory. Typically, the manufacturer just has a default password for every single router that comes off the line. A lot of times it is just something simple like username admin, password admin. Not secure, and the hackers know this. That's going to be one of the first things they try to get into your network. So we're going to look at how to change that. But before we dive into it, the question that a lot of IT people get from their friends and family is, my Wi-Fi doesn't work. What should I do? What's going on? So how do you improve your Wi-Fi signal? Maybe on one end of the house, your Wi-Fi is not connecting very well. Maybe your Wi-Fi is just really slow. So the first step to take is look at the location of your router. Where is the signal emanating from? You want to put your router in a central location. A lot of us put it next to our computers in our home offices, and sometimes those home offices are spare bedrooms clear on the other side of the house. A better solution is a more central location. You want to avoid the kitchen, right? Because refrigerators can block signals and microwaves can interfere with a Wi-Fi signal. So keep it out of the kitchen. If you have a centrally located kitchen, try to move it somewhere else. Avoid large metal objects. So if you live in a old Bond movie mansion and you have weird metal sculptures throughout your home, don't put your Wi-Fi router right there. Metal interferes with the signal. In terms of height, it's a good idea to put it on a shelf or a table, something that's roughly waist high. These Wi-Fi routers, especially in the home, they're really good at broadcasting a signal horizontally, but they don't broadcast a signal vertically very well. So if you've got it kind of plugged in the corner on the floor somewhere, that may be affecting your connectivity because it's not broadcasting up high enough. You'll also see a lot of access points, especially in businesses, mounted to the ceiling. A lot of those access points are designed to sort of like a conical shape. Michael, yes, this is being recorded, so we can share this. This will be posted to our YouTube channel afterward, so you can access the beginning. I know you're a few minutes late coming in. but the conical shape, right, from the roof. And that's great, but a home router is really kind of this wide radius. And adjust those antennas if you need it. So the ideal angle for those antennas is somewhere between 30 degrees and 60 degrees. So that tends to be the best angle for them, but you can play around with it a little bit too. If it's still slow, right, you can check your network speed by going to speedtest.net. That's going to actually check the internet pipe coming in to see how fast that is. Is it actually the speed that you are paying for? If it's significantly different, you may have to contact your internet service provider and see what is going on. Now, your internet service provider is going to be happy to sell you an upgraded package with additional speed. But if you're not getting the speed that you should be, before upgrading, make sure that their network is up to par. And then they have all sorts of caveat language too of speeds up to 100 megabits a second, 300 megabits a second. So you're not always going to get the top tier speed, but you should be getting close enough, consistently enough. So check a few times a day, and if it's like 50% or lower than what you're paying for all the time, take a screenshot. Make sure you share that with your ISP. Update your router firmware. We're going to talk about that, and upgrade your router if it's older than 5 years old. If it's older than about 5 years, it probably doesn't support the latest Wi-Fi 6 standard. So Wi-Fi 6, it doesn't necessarily improve the speed output, but what it's more efficient at handling multiple devices connected to the network. So 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we had fewer devices, which the number of internet connected devices just goes up and up and up and up and up. So Wi-Fi 6 is designed to handle those multiple connections more efficiently, which translates into better performance, and it's going to look like it's faster. So if it's old, replace it. Your range extender, if you have a very large house and your single router doesn't cover the whole property, you can look into a range extender. Typically, how that range extender is going to work is it will broadcast the signal over a wider area wherever it's placed in the home, but it's going to have the bandwidth capability. So you're getting a stronger signal, but lower, a smaller pipe for that data coming through. So it's worth considering, but if your Wi-Fi is slow everywhere, then the range extender's only going to make it slower in that additional area. So we talked about changing your Wi-Fi settings, changing your password, updating your firmware. This is how you can log into your router. For most routers, it's going to work like this. You're going to find the IP address of your router on a sticker on the bottom of your router, the box that came from the store. You enter that into your web browser, and it's going to take you to a login page where you're going to put in a username and a password. If you've never done this before, it's probably the default. So the default might be on the sticker, or you can just Google your router model, your manufacturer, and then Google will tell you, here's the default password. If it's your first time going in, make sure you change the password, right? We talked about that. Once you're in, you can have access to the dashboard, and this is where you can change your settings. You can do firmware updates. All of your dashboards are going to be different depending on the manufacturer, but they're going to have similar settings available. One of the more advanced settings is the type of encryption that your router is using. So these are the different types of Wi-Fi encryption. On the left is the oldest, on the right is the newest. So WEP was the first. It has been cracked. It doesn't work anymore. It's full of vulnerabilities. Don't use it. WPA was created to address those weaknesses in WEP quickly, but not entirely. So WPA was sort of a stopgap measure. Again, it's been cracked. It doesn't work. It's not the standard to use. WPA2 was introduced to fully cover the gaps in WEP and fully flush out the WPA, the Wi-Fi Protected Access Standard. It's stronger encryption, but not all devices these days support the WPA WPA3 standard, so they have to use WPA2. WPA3 is the current one. It's the best. It's great. Use that whenever possible. What your router is probably set to, if it's a new enough router, it's probably set to broadcast or encrypt with WPA3 for any device that can use WPA3, or default back to WPA2 if your device can't support WPA3, if it's an older device, which that's a great setting by default. Some of your older routers might be using these older encryption standards, or they may not have the WPA3 enabled. So this is something that you can change within those settings. You can also set it to only allow WPA3 if you're particularly security minded, but just keep in mind that your older devices may not be able to connect to your network. Your firmware updates, right? This is, again, going back into the logging into your router. Manufacturers are regularly releasing firmware updates for your router, but your router doesn't always update automatically. A lot of times you have to do a manual process to update them. And these updates have security features and performance features that are going to help speed up your internet connection if you're particularly out of date. The old school method that some routers still use is you have to download it from the manufacturer's website, log into your router, and then upload it, which can be a little bit of a pain in the butt. Most routers these days will just have an update firmware button within the dashboard. You can do that. It's a lot easier. Our recommendation, check 1 time a year, 2 times a year, see what you have. Because if you start falling behind on those firmware updates, it's making you more vulnerable, which you're not going to notice day to day. It's going to make your internet performance potentially worse, which you are going to notice day to day. And if you do happen to hear of some major flaw in Netgear router or TP-Link or whatever you have, go in and update that firmware as soon as you learn about that. Now, one last little security tip. This isn't so much this isn't going to make you particularly more secure, but it is interesting to talk about, and it can keep nosy people from trying to connect to your network. You can hide your Wi-Fi network by disabling its SSID broadcast. The SSID is just the name of the network. So you can see in the example here, a guy at the top said, "Get your own damn internet." A guy that's highlighted said, "Okay, I got my own damn internet." Those are the SSIDs. You can hide those. The get your own internet guy should be hiding his internet if he doesn't want anybody trying to connect. What it means is whenever you're trying to connect, you have to manually enter the network name onto your device when you're trying to connect. So it can be a little bit more inconvenient. The signal is still being broadcast, right? It's just the SSID isn't discoverable in that list. You know, when you're trying to connect to Wi-Fi, it's not going to show up in that list. So you have to do a manual process to connect to it. There's a lot of tools that can just find the signal that bypass this step altogether. So it doesn't really make you more secure, but it keeps nosy neighbors and bored teenage Shanes from trying to log into his neighbor's network when he's when he's got nothing better to do than guess passwords. Okay, one last knowledge check for you. If it's still up on your phone, go ahead and pull that up. If you need to scan the QR code, that's going to come. That's here, and it's going to come up shortly. Let me get that rolling. Okay, so that last question should be up for you. And we should be sharing it here. Which of the following encryption methods should not be used to protect your network? Yes, and this is multiple correct answers. You can select more than one. Okay, very good. I'm seeing some promising results here. Yes. Okay. I think everybody's in. So yes, no tricks here other than WNBA. That's just another acronym that starts with W. WP, absolutely right. That's the oldest one. Don't use it. WPA, again, totally cracked, not usable. WNBA, they are excellent basketball players. They are probably not developing new cryptography to encrypt your network. One or two people said WPA2. Now this one is this is kind of the 50-50 one, right? You don't want to be reliant on WPA2, but a lot of devices cannot connect to a WPA3 protected network. So WPA2 is what you use if WPA3 is not available. So that one we still say is okay to connect to. It's better than the other ones, but of course, nobody picked WPA3. That one is the current standard. That's the best in breed. Okay, that was the last question. Thank you for indulging me. I'll go ahead and jump back into our PowerPoint. We've just got one more topic that David is going to cover here, and that is Bluetooth security.
Alrighty. Yeah, so Bluetooth is a great option for creating what we call a personal area network. It has a range of 30 feet and can be used to connect a lot of different devices to transmit a good amount of data over a small distance. So, as with any, of course, connection protocol, it comes with its own inherent risks. Though here's some of the types of Bluetooth attacks. Bluejacking can be used to send text, images, or sounds over Bluetooth, most often used for pranks and that sort of thing. But it can potentially be used to send bad links and things like that in the guise of good data. Blue snarfing, which is a ridiculous word that somebody came up with. I don't know who was in the naming process, but they think they're hilarious, I'm sure. Gaining unauthorized access to email files, contacts, texts, etc. over Bluetooth. So that's when a device asks to connect. You think it's a legitimate request. You hit yes. And then they're going to grab every permission that they possibly can so that they can access any data or information that's coming across that connection. And then blue bugging, taking over a device to listen to phone calls, send messages, basically act like a phone or some other device like that. So if you get any unexpected notifications about a device trying to connect using Bluetooth, do not allow those. That is most definitely suspicious. And it's best to just disable Bluetooth when you're out and about in public and you're not using any Bluetooth devices. Obviously, you do need to leave it on to connect to your car or your headphones or your speakers or your now fridges and smart light bulbs or whatever else needs to use it. But yeah, best to disable that when you're not using it just to prevent these kind of unauthorized attacks. And then, of course, yeah, just make sure if you see any requests that you're not actively trying to connect to, decline them immediately. And then probably turn it off at that point because somebody's clearly trying to get in.
Yeah, and one other piece about Bluetooth security is if you ever notice somebody trying to connect to your device, Bluetooth has a range of only 30 feet. So the person who's trying to get unauthorized access, they're in the same room as you. So that's extra scary. You want to abort, leave the facility if you can. But that is all we have for you. So we are going to wrap it up. As always, our attendees will be receiving certificates of completion. They are not nearly as nice as this example here on the screen, but we do our best. Print those out, save those to your files. At this time, we want to thank you, of course, for your time and open it up for questions. Yes, Stefan, thank you. Happy holidays. Feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions. Put those in the chat. Yeah, like we said, we got you out of here 10 minutes early. I wasn't quite right at 15, but yeah, any questions, please. We're either expert teachers or everybody's a little shy. I'm going to go with we just taught you everything you need to know. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Of course, you can reach out to David and I at events@Leisha-Knock. Slide deck, Stefan. No, we don't send out the slide deck, but we do have this recorded and we will put it up on our YouTube page, so you can access it there. And thank you, Ben. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We are going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Thanks, Arnaldo. Yes, and happy holidays to everyone who is still here. Take care.
Bye, everybody.